He was the most iconic enhancement talent in the World Wrestling Federation. He's wrestled such superstars as The Undertaker and King Kong Bundy. But this time he comes straight to Jersey to give his side of the story. Jersey Jay-Z welcomes Mario Mancini.
Welcome, everyone, to Straight Out of Jersey. I am your host, Joe Zapata, and my next guest is one of the biggest names to put over the biggest names in wrestling during the time in the 80s. I used to watch him every Saturday morning. He's in the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. I welcome to the show Mario Mancini. How do you doing, Mario?
Good, Joe. How are you?
Good. Well, the reason I brought you on, Mario, obviously, is because I had PJ Polaco on recently, and there was some back and forth things happening. He said, you said back and forth, and I want you to come on here, clear the story on what happened and with Scott Wilder.
Well, this is exactly what I saw, because after your show, 12, 13 people sent me the show, told me to go in so many minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You basically brought me up to PJ.
Correct.
And basically PJ's answer went to right to Scott Wilder.
Correct.
And he just talked about Scott Wilder.
Correct.
And then you reiterated and said, well, what about Mario? And his only answer to me was, I rubbed him the wrong way.
Yes.
How? He didn't say.
No.
So here's the deal. And you know what? This is a shame, because I live 20 minutes from PJ.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if, you never burn a bridge in this business.
No.
Ever. So
Nope.
if he ever needed help, if there was ever a dire emergency, he could have called me, and the code of the brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been there for him. You know what I mean? So, all he did was say I rubbed him the wrong way.
Yeah.
This is what he should have said.
Okay.
When I was on Maven's show, I got Scott Wilder and Mario Mancini confused. Mario's name, and he called me an awful name, came out of my mouth, and it really was supposed to be Scott Wilder, so I apologize.
Correct.
But it looks like he's not the kind of guy that does that. So I talked to Scott Wilder. He said a lot of pleasant things about Scott Wilder, probably because, if need be, because Scott Wilder's such a nice guy, if he never needed 20 or 30 bucks, Scott would probably still send it to him. He doesn't want to burn that bridge.
Of course.
I've never sent him any money. So, I have a reputation. I have my own podcast with Roma, Power and Glory. We have another one that, took a little sabbatical. Hopefully we get back to it, called Hey Roma. Nonetheless, the truth is always spoken, and I always speak the truth, and I have a reputation of that. I've never been told that my podcasts were horrible. I was able to help Maurice on Cheap Heat reach some numbers that he needed to get. That being said, Rome and I got in my car. We picked him up, stopped at the liquor store, made a couple of bathroom stops, had a pleasant conversation. Mainly, he and Roma were going with the conversation. I was driving, focusing on the road. We got there, wouldn't eat dinner, ate dinner in his room. Roma himself, because he's so overprotective of me, you can't find two guys that close without the same blood running through their veins than me and Paul Roma.
Yep.
God forbid anybody said boo about me, he'd be all over him, and he is. And he's like, you know what, Mario? He didn't take breaks to eat lunch. He wasn't gone for 20 minutes. He was gone for 4. I talked to Scott Wilder again. He was gone for close to 4 hours. And there's only one way, and Roma's like, no, he wasn't. He didn't go and grab a sandwich. He went and he drank.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Okay.
that's it. That's the truth. Whether PJ wants to admit it or not,
Yeah.
that's what he did. And you know what? Listen, I'll tell anybody they want anything they want to know about me. Anything they want to know about me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mario, do you go through 3 tins every 2 days? I do. I do. I go through
Mm-hmm.
3 tins of skull every 2 days, probably. Yeah, I do. Okay.
Okay.
All right. What, Mario? Do you watch your diabetes? Most of the time. Most of the time. Um, I go and teach tonight at Paradise Alley. Before I go, I stop at Dunkin' Donuts to get an iced coffee, and I got to know everybody there. And they close at 7, and they throw all the donuts away, and they go, "Hey, you guys want some donuts?" And they give me 2.5 dozen of donuts. Do I sneak one on the way to the school? Sure. You know what I mean? Scott Wilder, and this isn't because of diabetes, it's because of stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
People say, "Oh, diabetes," and I go, "No, stupidity." Scott Wilder Promotions is changed to Nine Toe Entertainment because I have 9 toes. I have a T-shirt that says 9 toe. I macerated my toe and it got infected, and it wasn't due to diabetes. In fact, after they took it off, they let me out a day and a half early because I was healing too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And if diabetes is going to affect you like that, you're not healing like that. So I was pretty
Mm-hmm.
thankful.
Mm-hmm.
So do I pitch a perfect game in life? I absolutely do not, and I don't mean to be in a glass house. But number one, I'm not doing anything that's not going to hurt anybody but myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I just don't know. I went to high school. It's in my screenplay. I was a freshman in high school, and I went on the wrestling team because I decided I wanted to be a pro wrestler when I was 14. So when I was in the 8th grade. So when I got a freshman in high school, I was dying to get on the wrestling team because I figured that was my precursor to professional wrestling, right? And there was and again, I wrote a screenplay. I finally got done with it, and it's in it. And this exact story is in it. And I won't mention his name, but there was a senior, and they matched me up with a senior because I was going to be in the unlimited weight as a freshman. And all he did was cross face me until I would bleed, and he would bully me in the hallways. And I couldn't figure out because I didn't know him, and I wasn't the kind of a kid that looked for trouble. So I was so confused. So I went to my buddy Andrew, who was also a senior that I was very close to. He lived on my street, and I said, "Andrew, why does he hate me so much?" He goes, "I don't know. I'm going to talk to him." And he said, "Hey, the kid, he lives on my street, and his name is Lenny, and he's a good kid. Why are you doing this to him?" He goes, "I don't like his face." That's what reminded me when
Really?
PJ, yeah, it brought me all the way back to that when
Wow.
PJ said he rubbed me the wrong way. Well, I want to know what I did specifically, Joe, because I didn't do a damn thing to that man.
Yep.
I
I
did
know.
nothing. I did nothing to him. I didn't judge him. I didn't try to lecture him. I didn't do anything
Yep.
but drive and go along for the ride, and sign autographs. I didn't say a damn thing that would insult him, offend him, nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
before we got on the air, I cried like a baby when Chris died. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of love between Tito and I,
Yep.
so as long as my peers then still have respect for me. I mean, I was at the
They
80s
do.
con. I was at the 80s con in Jersey, and I was in a three-way here. It was me, Roma, and Bret Hart talking. And Bret and Roma were talking, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a pause. And Bret looked at me and said, "Hey, Mario." I said, "Hitman,
Oh.
how you doing?" He goes, "Good." Now, SD Jones and I were their debut match, the Hart Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and I've worked with Bret house show. I worked with him more than several times, and he looked at me and he went, "You were good." I went, "What?" Like a 4-year-old. I went, "What?" He goes, "You were good."
Wow.
I felt like Burt Lancaster walking into the cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah.
That's the period on the end of my sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that being said, I know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I know who I was. There's a T-shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees that says, "Yeah, I was a jobber for the biggest effing wrestling company on the planet." People were booming things to me the past 2 days. Some website put up the top 30 enhancement talents. I hate being called an enhancement talent. Um, in the history of pro wrestling, and they're like, "Oh, you're in there." Okay, so I'm one of the biggest losers in pro wrestling history. That wasn't my dream, Joe, when I was
I
14.
mm-hmm.
The reason why I decided I wanted to become a pro wrestler when I was 14 is because I was in my living room,
Mm-hmm.
which is also in my screenplay. I was in my living room,
Mm-hmm.
and Vince McMahon was sitting in an empty arena with Bruno Sammartino in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Dark, no one
Okay.
there. And he
Okay.
said, Bruno, you have something to tell the fans? And he said, yeah, I'm retiring. My last match will be at Shea Stadium against George the Animal Steel. And I looked at my family and I said, I'm going to become a professional wrestler. And they're like, yeah, all right. I go, no, no, no. I'm going to become a pro wrestler. I'm going to take Bruno's spot. Joe, I didn't say I want to be a pro wrestler. I'm going to take Frank Williams' spot. I didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
I said I was going to take Bruno's spot. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't end up that way. It didn't
No.
end up that way. So, you know what? I think the boys really are fond of me because I know my place.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
know I know my place. Listen, I have 3 T-shirts. One says the Losers Club. The other one has a finger, a big white Mickey Mouse club pointing up, and on the bottom of it says loser. Right? The other one says warning, I'm a loser. You know what I mean? Listen, I embrace it. I know
Mm-hmm.
who I am. I'm no superstar. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I know who I am. I was a guy. Now, you know what? My wrestling career was Forrest Gump. I'm the Forrest Gump of wrestling. Listen, Tony Altomar trained me. He
Mm-hmm.
worked for The Office. I
Mm-hmm.
start wrestling school of October of '83. In
Mm-hmm.
January of '84, he's like, "You want to go to the Garden?" I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay."
Mm-hmm.
So that's the night that, and you can see it on YouTube. That's the night Hogan takes the belt from the Sheik.
The Sheik.
And me and Altomar are helping the Sheik back to the dressing room. I'm in the same TNT leisure suit. I'm in the same one I wore in TNT. Then he tells me to go to the Garden again. And I'm like, okay. And this time I'm holding Roddy Piper back in the war to settle the score.
Mm.
Same leisure suit. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm the Forrest Gump of pro wrestling. I'm in places I'm not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
people ask me, "Hey, when you did the Undertaker's debut match, did you know?" No, I didn't know he was going to last 30 years. I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was big bully Busick's debut match too.
Wow.
You
That's
know what I
amazing.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Nicest guy on the planet. But how long did he last? You seem to be a wrestling historian, Joe.
Yeah. Billy didn't last that long. The
Right. But
Undertaker did.
what a fantastic human being.
Correct.
Um, so I want to get back to my story, Joe.
Go ahead.
So, and it's ironic that this person had your first name. So now Terry Garvin calls me.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I need you in the Boston Garden tonight.
Okay.
I said, okay. He goes, you got to do me a favor, though. You got to pick up Tony Atlas from the airport. I'm like, okay.
Tony's cool.
So I pick up, another one of my brothers.
Yep, I
So,
know him. Tony's a good
so
guy.
yeah. So I pick up Atlas, and we're maybe in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Stratford, Connecticut. He goes, Mancini, I'm hungry, brother. I said, all right. I said, listen, there's a brand new Italian because Tony loves fried calamari.
Oh, nice.
So there's a new Italian restaurant just opened up in Milford, and let's go there. And he said, okay. So we went there. Who do you think our waiter was?
Who?
The guy that bullied me in high school.
Get out of here.
So he brings the water and he walks away, and I go, Tony, that guy bullied me in high school. He would cross face me until I bleed. He picked on me the whole year. He goes, oh. So he comes back to take the order. He goes, he's got a name tag on. He goes, oh, hello, Joe. And he goes, hi. He goes, you know who I am? And he goes, yeah. He goes, do you know who that is? He goes, no, that's Mario Mancini. He's a professional wrestler for the WWF. Did you know that, Joe? Uh, yeah. He goes, I'll tell you what, Joe, we got a big show to go to tonight. So we'd really appreciate it if you made it snappy. This is what I want to eat. And he brought the food, and the meal was over, and he goes, hey, Joe, you're a real good waiter. He goes, come on, Mancini, we got to go to the Boston Garden, brother. And let me tell you something. When I was watching Atlas walk to the passenger seat of my car, it was like watching God. It was like watching God himself
Wow.
walk to my car. I was like, wow, man, that was awesome. So
Mhm.
I had some good, but the another point I want to make is Tony Atlas, wants to sit down with you and talk about life. We are friends in the wrestling business, and he wants to get caught up. He wants to talk about life. He doesn't talk about careers.
Nope.
Okay. So that's Tito Santana, a mainstay in the wrestling business from, I want to guess, 1979.
79, correct.
Okay. So Hogan, who's the Babe Ruth of this business,
Mm-hmm.
he's getting hammered every day, Terry. Oh, what's he lying about now? What's he doing now? What's he done at? This, that, and the other thing. Ric Flair, if he gets drunk and acts like an idiot, goes viral, right? If he starts insulting people and blah, blah, blah.
Yep. I've seen it up
Yeah,
front with him.
the business will always be there. And the
Mm-hmm.
business is huge. From the WWE to AEW to TNA to whatever, right down to independent pro wrestling, the business is huge. Alone, there's no human being on the face of the planet that will ever be bigger than the business. No one
Mm-hmm.
will ever be bigger than the business. Now, I guess if I really didn't scratch my chin when I got out of the WWF 3 months before my 26th birthday, or 2 months before my 26th birthday, at the ripe old age of 25, and scratch my chin and go, what am I going to do now?
Mm.
And really figure it out. And by the grace of meeting the gentleman that runs this office 32 years ago, when I started going to college, and he said, whoa, you should go to law school. And I'm like, yeah, not smart enough to go to law school. And he's like, no, yeah, you are. I'm like, all right. I I I can't look at my bank account and go, look, oh look, there's WWF money.
Mm.
No.
Wasn't there.
There are some guys that worked in this business that made that kind of money, like Chris. When he looked at me, he was staring at me. I'm like, what are you staring at? He goes, it's over. I go, nothing's over. Don't say that. He goes, listen, me and Hillbilly Jim, what was the main event last year, Mancini? It's over. He goes, you know what, though? I saved every penny. I still drive the same car. I
Mm-hmm.
still live in the same house. I saved every penny. So there are a lot of guys that made that money that saved it, and a lot of guys that made that money and they didn't. And maybe they look back at their lives and their careers and possibly regret it. That's not your fault. That's not my fault. If they're scratching and struggling now, that's we're all responsible for our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't. Every time PJ comes on, he seems bitter.
Yeah.
And you're a hell of a host.
Thank you.
So all you did was try to put him over and make him feel good about himself.
Correct.
You know what I mean? I watched it. I paid attention. Um, you know, if it were me and you gave me all of those accolades, and I got off the show and I went, he said I was a really smart guy. I really don't feel that smart because this stuff's got a hold on me and I can't shake it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he's ever going to shake it. He needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to know that his body's going to break down.
Mm-hmm.
His body's going to answer him one day.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's going to be a flash on a TikTok.
Yep.
And he's going to be a Facebook post.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
there's going to be 10 bells ringing for him. It's
Right.
going to happen to all of us. We just hope it happens later than sooner. But, in my estimation, everybody did nothing but try to help him.
Correct.
Maven, I went out of my way at a convention to go and meet Maven because it was the genesis of his TikToks, and I was really enjoying them because I was able to sit there and watch him and go, yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yep, yep, he's telling the truth. That's true. So I admired him for that. And I said, hey, Maven, Mario Mancini, I watch your stuff. I love it. Hey, man, thanks a lot. Blah, 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 blah. That was good stuff. But lately, even that thing with PJ, let's face it. If something's wrong with, in 2021, Roma had the Widowmaker.
Oh wow, you almost died, huh?
Yeah, he was
Wow.
on his way out.
Oof.
He was on his way out, and Paul Roma, the doctor goes, I go, that's Roma. He goes, yeah, veins don't supply blood to your heart. Yours did. And I said, of course it did, Roma. You're not from this earth. You know what I mean? Because I knew him when he was 25, and he is the best athlete I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, he's built like a god.
It was just incredible to watch
Mm-hmm.
it. So a guy 240 pounds that bounced around on his toes like he
Mm-hmm.
was 120 pounds. It was a sight to see. It really was.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew. Nothing was put
Wow.
on social media. Nobody
Yep.
knew Paul Roma had a heart attack. He came from the home from the hospital. I went to his house immediately, and I saw him, and he goes, "Don't do it. Don't do it,
Mm.
Mario. Don't do it." And I went, "Bah!" He goes, "Damn it! I told you, don't do it." Nobody knew that because it was private. Because he's my
Mm-hmm.
friend, he's my brother, and it was just between he and I. If Maven really wanted to help him, did it have to be a show?
Yeah, you got a point.
Did it have to be a show? That's his brother, and he started off with why couldn't it be behind closed doors going, listen, PJ, it had to be on the air with hits.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah.
I would never expose my friend like that, even if somebody had a drug problem or alcohol problem. But I'm not putting that on the air. I'm closing the door behind me and going, listen, man, we're all worried about you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, and you're losing respect out there. It would be a private conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It would not be out here for it to be aired.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way it's done.
Yeah.
At least not in my life, and I know not in Roma's life. But you know what? Nobody knew for a very long time
Mm-hmm.
that Roma had a heart attack. Nobody knew for a very long time.
How's he doing now? Doing great?
He's unbelievable. So he went, I don't know where he went. He went to France or Germany. He went somewhere. And I said, "Are you out of your mind?" And he goes, "Listen, they're paying me X amount of dollars." I go, "That's a lot of money." He goes, "You bet that's a lot of money. That's why I'm doing it." I go, "Yeah, but your life is worth more than that." I go, "Do me a favor. You're the king of psychology." I mean, we were taught by Harry Fuji, Arnold Skolin, Pat Patterson. As long, when Pat worked between the lines, it's kind of like Pete Rose. When he when he was hit between the lines, Pat was a genius,
Hmm.
absolute genius. But you get him outside the line, and oh, yeah. So we learned from Pat Patterson, Chief J Strongbow, Arnold Skolin, Gorilla Monsoon, so it Vince himself. So he's the master of psychology. I said, work like Strongbow.
Hmm.
Work like Strongbow. I said, you get the heat up on you, fall to your knees and start crawling. I
Hmm.
said, don't take a lot of bumps. Don't give them what they want. Give them enough. But so he calls me up and this is a year after his surgery. This is all four arteries. This is
Wow.
a
Wow.
year after. So he calls me up. He goes, "Shouldn't this scar be healed by now?" I said, "Why are you asking me that?" He goes, "Hey, dropped an elbow from the top rope and my scar opened up." And I'm like, "Oh."
Oh my God. That's crazy. Mm-mm. Well, that's him, huh?
Yeah, one of the toughest guys I've ever met in my life, mentally and physically.
Hmm.
Um,
I was going to
just,
ask you. I'm here in Nutley, New Jersey, filming it, and my family friends, Frank Curto, we're friends with Sal Scarpa. You might know his brother.
yeah, I listen. I
So
had
the
the,
chief.
I had the privilege. I'm not gonna say your last name, Tom. I know you're a private guy, but I had the privilege of meeting Chief's best friend. And he told me all about the golf stories and stuff. He told me about
Correct.
Sal. But he's got everything Chief ever had
Yes, he
because
does.
he didn't want to leave it to Mark because he was afraid Mark would sell it all.
Correct. He
So
has
I
everything.
became very good friends with Tom, and I need to get caught up with him. And I really need to go to Georgia and visit him. He is a guy that is worth going and seeing. And he was kind enough, which I have in my office here as a tribute. He sent me a pair of Chiefs trunks,
Wow.
and I have it in a shadow box.
Wow, that's really nice.
Oh yeah, his wife, she took the tomahawks off, and we can't figure out why.
Hmm.
But she did. You could see the outline of it there, and he sent me some other stuff. And Strongbow was my second father
He
in
was
my
great.
life because I was close to him for 28 years.
Hmm.
He's the first guy I called my first day of law school before I went into the building. I was in the parking lot. I called him. I said, "Chief, guess where I am?" He goes, "I don't know, Mr. Mancini. Where are you?" I said, "I'm sitting outside the Massachusetts School of Law waiting my first class of law school." And he was like blown away. So he was my second dad, and all the guys know that. All the guys know that. That's how Tom and I became friends because he listened to some of my podcasts. He goes, "I didn't know somebody can love him just like me." And I said, "Oh, y- you
Wow.
know, it was I couldn't breathe when he died. I hyperventilated. I couldn't.
Mm.
I had to breathe into a bag. I couldn't breathe.
And
Um,
let me
so
ask you also one thing about Vince McMahon. You
yeah,
obviously know him. He had a documentary, a lot of things going on. When you were there, how was he with you? And did you see any inappropriate behavior?
I I had a couple of interactions with him. Again, I don't tell tall tales or anything like that. I
Correct.
had a couple interactions with him. He was always fine with me. The first interaction I ever had with him when Tony Altomar got fired.
Hmm.
Um, and and I was nervous because he's just like the mafia. He's responsible for me bringing me into the business. So I was at Poughkeepsie, and I'll never forget it was in the corner kind of where the showers were, and I said, "Vince, can I talk to you for a minute?" And he said, "Sure, Mario, go ahead." And I said, "Listen, I'm the last of 6 kids, and I was raised to earn everything I get, and I'm not a thief. I never stole anything in my life, and I'm not a thief, and I don't want to be associated or guilty by association. Here I am, like 19 years old, saying this." And he just put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, "You're fine, Mario." I'm like, "Okay." And you never know, but I was, obviously, that was like 1985, 86, so I was all right. The other one was when I told him I wanted to get a doll, a action figure, and he kind of rolled his eyes and he said, "What's so special about your action figure?" I said, "It comes with a stretcher, an ambulance, and 2 paramedics." And he went, "I like that. I like that." And I walked away and I said, "Oh, I'm in. I'm in." And he never made it. He never made it. The other one was I wanted to be Super Mario Mancini.
Mhm.
And I said, "I'll wear the hat, I'll come out with the tool belt." I got the finish off the top rope, an ass bump to the chest, just like the video game. And he said, "I'm really not interested in paying Nintendo." And I said, "But you pay Marvel Comics." And he turned beet red and walked
Mhm.
away from me. And Chief caught it.
Mhm.
And he came running over. He goes, "What did you say to him?" I said, "Chief, I think I'm in a lot of trouble." He goes, "Stay right here." And he went over to Vince, and his arms were waving, and Vince is talking to him, and Strongbow's arms are waving and everything. And Strongbow walks away and comes back to me, and he goes, "Stay away from him. Just stay away from him." I go, "Okay." And of course, the other time, which Roma and I were really upset. We did Tuesday Night Titans again in the 1978 leisure suit, and
You still have that suit?
no, no, it was my brother's, and he never wore it again. He was so mad at me because I stretched it out on him.
Oh, okay.
Um, so at the end of Tuesday Night Titans, Vince said, "Well, I didn't expect the set to be still be together, but good show." And he walked away, and I looked at Rome and I went, "If he wanted us to wreck the set, I would have been more than happy to do that." You know what I mean? So,
Wow, that's pretty
It,
great.
it wasn't it was Tony Altomar who really started spilling his guts. And to this day, and you talk about a documentary coming out in the fall,
Mhm.
it's a huge one that Rome and I did.
Yep.
And it's about Vince. and
Mhm.
and I figured, Joe, why not, Joe? I took a flamethrower to it anyway because I did the right thing and stood up for Rita Chatterton. I did what
Mhm.
was morally right,
Mhm.
but by doing that, there's a dartboard somewhere with my face on it in Vince McMahon's house. Um, so so you know, there's a documentary coming out in the fall that's going to be huge.
Mhm.
With myself on it, Roma, Rita,
Okay.
and some surprising people.
Okay.
So that's going to be something else.
And
But
you have the gym you guys run, the Paradise Alley, correct? You
yeah,
run that?
we have Paradise Alley Professional Wrestling. It's a wrestling school and promotion. We just ran a show last week. It was really successful, and
Mhm.
in the past 2 months, we've had about 8 people join. It's starting to boom. So
That's great.
I can't imagine after this documentary and everything that it might get even more popular. But
Wow, that's great.
yeah, I mean, um, listen, if I offended you, you know, I listen. There's a referee slash wrestler,
Okay.
and he lives up north in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
So I was on Facebook, and I saw this woman on Facebook, and I was like, "Wow, I've been single for 8 years, right?" I'm like, "Ooh, man, Joe, the wrestling business kind of kills you."
Yeah.
It just, I remember my ex-wife getting ready in the mirror, and I was sitting on the edge of the tub, and she said, "I don't know if it's because you walked in front of 18,000 people for as long as you did, but you are exhausting." Um, but listen, it's you got a lot of attention, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
and the girls exactly weren't ugly. So I saw this woman on Facebook, and I'm like liking her stuff and liking her stuff, and I inboxed her and I started a conversation, liking her stuff, and I'm liking her stuff, and all of a sudden, my buddy, the fog man, comes in and he goes, "Mancini, do you know that's so and so's ex?" And I stopped immediately. We had him in as a referee, and I took him across the parking lot and put my hands on his shoulders, and I said, "I am sorry. I was interacting with her, and I didn't know. I had no idea that was your ex. I didn't mean to disrespect you. I am so sorry. It
Hmm.
won't happen again."
Wow.
And he said, "Mario, thank you so much. Thank you so much." That's what a man does. You don't make excuses. You don't keep going back behind his back. You don't say,
Hmm.
that's what you're supposed to do. If he simply got us mixed up, and he called me a pretty awful name, say,
Hmm.
"Listen, my brain couldn't spit out Scott Wilder's name at that point. It just
Hmm.
wasn't in my head. All what was in my head was Mario Mancini. I got the wrong guy."
That's it. That's all you gotta
Because
do.
because to this day, if I rubbed them the wrong way,
Correct.
I, I need a little more specifics,
You're exactly right. You deserve
because
that.
I did nothing wrong. And on top of it, I can't tell you how many fans, um, you know, they tagged Maven and everything.
Hmm. Yep.
They tagged
They do.
Maven and everything. Maven just won't say a word.
Hmm. Well, I appreciate your time for clearing it up. I know you have to go to wrestling school, but I want to thank you so much for coming on. Let's do it again, and also wish your daughter a happy first Mother's Day.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, I saw the picture. She's beautiful, and the child's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much. He's gonna be one on July 12th. So
Wow.
in fact,
Finally.
my daughter had called my youngest daughter, who's gonna be 19,
Hmm.
and she said, "I'm getting a C-section. I'll move it. They scheduled it for July 12th. That's your birthday. Or do you mind my son having the same birthday as you?" She goes, "Absolutely not. I don't mind at all." So I have my youngest daughter, who's going to be 19, and I have my grandson on that day. So
Wow, that's beautiful.
um, yeah, it's pretty special. But Joe, I like your setup there.
Thank you.
It reminds me more of a radio show than a podcast.
Thank you.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
With the microphone thing and the headset, it's a little more radio
Yeah,
show kind of thing than a podcast. So, but I would love to do another one of these
I would
with
too.
you.
Love to do it again, because
Um,
you got a lot of great stories about Andre and everything. Oof.
what Andre, that drip. I'll tell you, we do this again. I'll tell you a story about Andre the Giant and the leaking ceiling. It's sitting next to me. Um, yeah, yeah. How I got mad. We'll tell the story with Strongbow, how I got mad about a guy coming into the dressing room the first night with pink trunks on, with Eminem on his ass, and he's walking to the men's room, and his hair looks like hay, and it's just flopping in the air. And I go, "How come that guy's got my initials on his trunks, Chief? Why does he have his initials on my trunk?" He goes, "What do you care?" I go, "I want to know, Chief. Why does he get to have those are my initials. What's his name?" He goes, "What do you care, Mancini?" I go, "Well, no, I want to know what his name is." Because his name is Macho Man.
Oh my God.
Oh, I'll tell you the Paul Heyman story too. The Paul Heyman story was genius. Good move on my part.
Hmm.
Good move. You should tag Paul the next show we do. Tag Paul with it.
I'm
He'll go, "You
I
know
will. I'll
what?"
tag Paul.
He'll go, "You know what? I remember that because I did it."
Wow, that's funny. That's crazy.
And you know what I'll do if we do that show and I tell that Paul Heyman story? I will apologize to him and tell him how nothing I became in the wrestling business, and he became everything. And it's just karma. And I had to come in for what I did to him.
Hmm.
I did to that 130-pound kid with a spaghetti string tie on. So we'll do this again,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. By the way, did you know Sabu? I know he recently passed. Did you? I'm obviously.
God bless Sabu. I had the opportunity to meet him. He was at some cons that I was at, but can I say, he's Tony Atlas, Tony Gurria, Tito or DiBiase or Honky Tonk, the way Honky Tonk screamed through it. I was in Vegas. Also, I heard Mancini, and I'm turning around. I'm like, who the hell's calling me? Mancini, get your ass over here, boy. So
That's
I
him.
can't say he was one of those, but I met his acquaintance. So I
Okay.
may God bless him and his family.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much, Mario. We're going to do this again. I'll reach out to you on Instagram and everything. Thank you. God bless your family. All right, buddy?
You too, brother. Thank you.
You got it, brother.
All right, man.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.